Hey there neighbors, Kevin here with eTrailer, and today we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the Oris Trailer Hitch with Detachable Receiver here on our 2025 BMW X5. If you own a BMW and you want to have the best of both worlds, where you have that nice looking aesthetic, where there's not that ugly trailer hitch receiver hiding out below your vehicle, but you also want the ability to tow a trailer or maybe just haul around your bike rack, the Oris Trailer Hitch with a detachable receiver is going to be the right fit for you. Removal of our receiver tube is super fast and simple. We're just going to pop open this white cover, take our key that's included in our kit. Once we have our key in there, we'll turn that counterclockwise and place one hand on the bottom of our receiver tube and pull out on the knob, and then turn that clockwise with our other hand, and that's going to pop this out. Now we can engage our kick sensor. There we go. And inside we'll have our storage bag that's going to come with it. We can pop that right into here, and inside you'll have your operating manual. There'll be some gloves in here because the shank of this is going to be lubricated so that it can pop in and out nice and easily, and you don't want to be touching that because then your hands are going to get all greasy. But once we have it in there, we'll also have our plug that we're going to use to cover up the hole here so that we don't have anything getting stuck in there or any rainwater getting splashed up in there that could end up causing some corrosion. And we're all good to go. When it's time to tow, we can just pop out our plug. It's got little tabs on the sides that you can easily grip and pull down with, and then it's time to just pop it right in. Line up your hole, pop it in, take your key out. You're going to want to turn that clockwise to relock that knob. Just cover up the lock there and you're all ready to go. One of the standout features of this specific hitch is that this is a detachable hitch that doesn't require a bunch of extra tools, and you're still able to tow a trailer with it, unlike some other options that are out there on the market where you're either replacing the receiver with a ball mount or you're having to use a wrench and a torque wrench and get a whole lot of hardware torqued down in a very tight space. It's just really not fun. Takes a lot of time to do versus just a simple knob that you can turn and pop your receiver in and out with. Now, this is going to have a 5,000 pound gross towing weight capacity, which is the force pulling against our hitch, and a 500 pound tongue weight capacity, which is the downward force on the receiver tube here, which would be your bike racks and your cargo carriers. Now, just because it has that capacity doesn't mean that your vehicle does, so definitely make sure that you go and double check your owner's manual and figure out what your vehicle's rated to tow, and that way you're not overloading it and causing any damage to the vehicle or its suspension. This hitch is going to come with a 2-inch by 2-inch receiver tube opening, which is going to be the most common for all of your accessories out there. If you did need to, you could use a reducer to get down to that 1 1/4. Typically that's going to be your bike racks. In most cases, a lot of those will also come with a specific adapter that you can use to actually install it. Now, along with that, if we are going to be towing a trailer, there's a couple things we're going to need. We'll need our safety chain hooks to actually mate up with our loops that are in the back there, so we need to make sure that we're checking to see which one's actually going to work with it. And we're also going to need a pin and clip. Now, typically this is going to come with your ball mount. I highly recommend getting one that's locking, so that way no one's going to take off with your equipment. For this, you will need a 5/8 pin and clip, which, like I said, is not going to come with this, so you'll want to pick that up separately. Now, when it comes to the safety chain loops, like I was saying, these are tucked up in there pretty good. So our S-style hook, which would be most of the trailers that you could really tow in this weight class, that's going to fit in there no problem. You might have a little bit of a pull against your knob, so I'd probably keep an eye out on that and see if maybe that starts to rub on there, if these get pulled a little bit too much. On the driver's side, no issues at all. You got full mobility there. Now, when it comes to our heavier duty clevis with our latch here, now this is one where you might not be able to do it. All right, we're getting it in. Might have a little bit more of a bind up against that knob though. So like I said, just keep an eye out. That could sit there and rub and tear up your knob if it's not kept in check here. Now, when it comes to trailer hitches, there are a couple measurements that you also want to take into account before you install anything on the back of your vehicle here, and one of those being the distance from the center of our hitch pin hole to the outermost portion of our fascia. Now, typically that hitch pin hole is going to be behind the fascia in most cases. On this one, it's sitting outside of our fascia, So there's no way we're gonna have any issues unless our folding rack, whether that's a cargo carrier or a bike rack, would go past the hitch pin hole, which typically is not gonna be the case. So with this one, we got plenty of clearance with our fascia, and we don't need to worry about anything ending up hitting it or scratching it or denting it or anything like that. And the other one here is gonna be our clearance to the ground. So that's gonna be from the ground up to the top of the inside edge of our receiver tube, and we're right at 14 inches with that. So that's well above what we need. As far as the install goes, the hitch itself really isn't a hard thing to put on once the fascia's off. It's really just the fascia that's the issue here. There's a lot of fasteners, there's a lot of other little trim pieces you have to take out, and you also have to take out the tail lights, which are also going to require you to get inside the inner wall here so that you can get a nut off, which is pretty tight. It's hard to get to, especially on the passenger side where the fuses are all located, because they're kind of blocking your access to that nut. So this is one where I'd probably recommend using our dealer locator and finding a shop near you to get it professionally installed and just save yourself the hassle, because this one is a tough one. Now, if you are that installer and you are going to be doing this, stick around and I'll walk you through the process to make it nice and easy. Starting out our install, we're going to have our rear hatch open and our lift gate open as well. And we're going to need a few tools here. So an 8mm socket, you're going to want one that's pretty skinny as well with an extension, because we're going to have to get back inside this wall here and take out a nut so that way we can pop out our tail lights. And we're also going to need a T30 Torx bit, because there's a couple screws that we're going to be taking out as well that are also going to require that. And then one thing I like to just do personally is have a magnet stick for that nut that we're taking out on the inside of the wall here. Super easy to lose. So what I like to do is just get it most of the way loose with my 8mm socket, and then I'll stick this in there and I'll twist off that nut the rest of the way with the magnet stick, so that way I can still pull it out and not have to worry about it dropping down into the interior here where we can't reach it. So starting out, we'll pop out the cover that's going to be hiding our screws for our part of our tail light. So that's these guys, and we'll need that T30 Torx bit. And I might need to change this up just a bit. I'll have to switch over. There's not enough room for me to use my ratchet. Let's get that started. Once you get a little bit of the way, you can just finish it off by hand. Now, there's going to be a lot of fasteners that we're going to be taking out today, so I highly recommend having some sort of box with a bunch of different spots in it for all of your hardware to get separated and go into, so that way you can just put it all right back in reverse order. And we're going to repeat that same process over on our passenger side as well. We're also going to have two more fasteners down below where our two Torx bits were. That's right here, and that's going to be that 8mm socket again. And then on the passenger side, same thing, but then once we get that out, that nut, we're going to have to pop out our covers that are hidden here, and it's way up in here, and it's pretty much impossible to get our camera in there and see. But good thing to do is just kind of keep your eye level right where that nut would be with the tail light, and then you can kind of gauge where you should be feeling around to find it. All right, so we're on the driver's side. I've pulled back the liner. You can see that nut right there. It's a lot easier to get to this one than it is on the other side, because we have a lot of electrical components right in the way on that passenger side. But that is what we're looking for, that lock nut with the blue in it right there. All right, this is going to be a 12mm socket that you're going to need to get this nut off. The instructions, at least on ours, say 8mm, so you might need to just kind of double check before you get in there and realize you're not actually getting on it. So this is the one I was saying was a giant problem. This time I can actually get my hand in there a little bit, but still it's hard to really get the wrench on it. So last time I did this, I was using that big extension and then the magnet trick to get it out. This time I might actually be able to get my hand in there enough to get onto it with the wrench, but I'm gonna fight this a little bit. We're gonna get that nut out and we can keep rolling through this. There it is. There we go. Whew. All right, got it out. Definitely was a struggle. If you are doing a hitch and wiring, your wiring is going to require you to pull this whole panel. It's going to make it a little bit easier to get to. Pulling the panel requires quite a bit of other panels to be pulled as well. So since I'm not doing wiring today, I'm not going to go through all of that. If you are, pop that panel out and make your life a little bit easier. But now we got that out, we can pop out our tail lights and start working our way down, pulling out our fascia. All right, now with all that removed, your taillights won't have anything holding them in. There's nothing you gotta like try and pop out, but there is a wire harness. So make sure you pull up on that red tab there, depress the black one that's next to it, and then you can pop it out. If it's fighting you, push in a little bit first, compress it, and then pull, and it should release for you. Then we can set those aside. Of course, this one's in a bad spot to try and get your finger in. There we go. Next, we're going to be popping out our rear deflectors. These are super easy to break, so be super careful while trying to pry it out. If you look at the tabs on it, these just need to come straight back. So we're going to be pulling straight outwards. And then you've got a little bit of a hook on the very end of it, and that's the easy spot to bust. So really be careful, take your time trying to pop these out. It's not worth breaking it because these aren't cheap to replace. There we go. There we go. All right, behind each deflector there's going to be a screw that we're going to remove with an 8mm socket. And then once you have those removed, there's going to be 20 different screws all along the bottom of our fascia and also at our wheel well that we're going to need to remove, and those are all going to be using that 8mm socket. So I'm going to work my way from the driver's side over to the passenger and just pop each one of those out. It's much easier if you kind of start on one side and just work your way across. That way you make sure you get each one of them. Then once all those are removed, we should be able to pop out our fascia. But before you do that, make sure that you just take some tape and run it along the line between your fascia and then your actual body here. That's going to give you a little bit of protection, so that way as we pop this off, the two pieces that are painted aren't going to be rubbing against each other. They'll rub against the tape instead and just hopefully protect our paint, so that way we're not having to get anything touched up. All right, so looking under here, the instructions are telling us that these are all 8mm, but they are clearly not. We have some mix of some 10 and some 8s in there, so you might have to have both those sockets with you. It might be just this is a certain trim model issue, but you might find that on yours as well. So have both with you, that way you're all ready to go. Next, we're going to have 4 push pins, one here, 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 and here, that we're going to be popping out. To do so, you'll have to kind of move that lower lift gate a bit back and forth just to give yourself enough room. And then we'll just use a flathead screwdriver to pry those out. Now on our fender trim, we're going to pop this out. There's going to be a couple of push tabs and then a screw that we need to remove that's hidden right here. And that screw is going to have or require an 8mm socket. Once you have that out, we'll do the same thing on the driver's side. And then one thing I like to do is just stick like a towel or a shop towel, something like that, right in here, and kind of give us a little bit of a gap between our trim and our fascia, so that way it's not kind of getting stuck back in there when we go to pry this out. All right, now we're going to work our fascia off. I do have a second set of hands over at the other side. We got Joe, and we're going to just kind of pry out a little bit and get all those push tabs out and work our way around. If you need to, get yourself a little plastic trim panel tool, and like these spots right here, that little black tab that's inside there, that's what's holding us in. So if you can stick something in there and pry back at the same time, that'll help make it a little bit easier. There we go. And then one thing I'll do is just kind of put that white part up over that, so that way it's not popping back on there. And then when you get to this, it really wants to hang up because we have a little nut zert or something in there that's holding that in for that one screw that we took out earlier. That one really likes to stick here. So after like 5 minutes of struggling here, we finally got this off. You got to be real careful because there's a really easy way of just bending this and ruining the plastic here. So essentially you're going to get hung up on this guy right here, and then we've got these 3 tabs that are poking in. You can see the first one from the back side here. So if you can get your pry tool in there, you can kind of push down on it and then hopefully pop it out real easy. And you can also kind of push on the back side of this, help force that out a bit more. And then you can get in there with the rest and just kind of pry down on those as you're popping it out, and it should go a lot easier for you. Now you're also going to have 4 tabs down here that are also going to fight you. One thing you can try and do is just pull those off a little bit to the side and pry up on the tab. Once you get it past all of those little holders, it'll be a little bit easier to pop out. Be careful you don't pull on them too much though, because these are plastic and you could break them. There we go. One other thing I recommend, put a little bit of tape right here on the fascia, because as you're starting to yank this out, it's really easy to just kind of ding it up on the lower liftgate door here. So with all that said, we're going to try and get this the rest of the way off. It's still got a couple of push pins kind of holding us, or these tabs. I still got 2 over on that side that haven't popped out, but we're at a point now where we should be loose enough to get this out the rest of the way. There we go. Right here is the connector for our parking brake, or parking sensors, sorry. And we're going to press in on the little tabs on either side there, and we can pull that out. It's super important that you get that connected again, because if you don't, your rear parking sensors are not going to work. And it's really easy to forget that. With the fascia removed, we now are going to pop out the push pins holding on our sensor bracket here. I'll let that one help hold us up while I get the rest out. And for right now, I'm going to disconnect this just so that it's not in our way. I got a little ahead of myself and I already popped those out earlier, but there's going to be 2 little push tabs here that we're going to pop out to pop out this cover, and that's going to give us access to the mounting hardware for the bumper beam. I might have to come from the bottom to get to this one. It's not giving me enough room. But once you get that out, like I said, you can see right to that hardware. Don't want to pop out. There we go. Next, we're going to be using a 13mm socket to take off the nut here and here that's holding up our exhaust. As you can see, the bracket that holds it is welded up to the bumper beam, and we're going to pop that off real quick so that we can take this down. Now, just double check, look under here, make sure that you have something to help support it. Otherwise, you can just take a cam strap and then run it across and help hold up your exhaust, because we don't want the full weight of this just dropping right down after you take these bolts out. So luckily with us, we already have a brace in the way that's going to hold up our exhaust, so we don't need to run a strap or anything here. But just double check yours before you go ahead and start taking these out. Now we're going to be using an 18mm socket to remove the nuts holding up our bumper beam, so that way we can remove it. There'll be 4 on each side, and you're going to want an extension so that way you can get past the bumper beam and use an impact or a wrench. Now on the passenger side here, we also have a wire with a push pin connector right here. So you'll want to either use a flathead or a trim panel tool to pop that out. Now that we have our 4 nuts on each side removed, just give your bumper beam one more good once over. Make sure that there's no wire harnesses or anything else that are attached to it. And then you can pull it right off. And set that aside because we will not be reusing it. Now we will install our hitch. Just be careful of your wiring there. And in our hardware in our kit's going to be a conical washer. We want to make sure that we have the cone kind of facing towards our trailer hitch. And then we're going to have some nuts we'll put on as well. I'm going to get one of these on. And this is going to require a 19mm socket now instead of that 18. There we go. With that first one in place, that'll hold the hitch up so that we can get the rest of them in place. Now, one thing I should have done, skipped right past it, was adding on our brackets. So on those lower bolts on both the driver and passenger side, we're going to have a bracket. And these are side specific. We do want that flange that sticks out further out facing away from our vehicle, because that's where we're going to reinstall our hanger for our exhaust. Once you have all of your hardware back in place, then you can start torquing these down. There'll be a little diagram in the instructions. There'll be a picture, and it shows each one of these bolts because we're also going to be torquing the exhaust hanger bolts once we get those back in. Now, the leftover hardware that we have is going to be these 4 bolts. There's going to be 2 flat washers and then 4 flange nuts. So for our exhaust hanger, we are going to be popping that bolt right in. And then the little tab right here should match up with that second hole. Might have to kind of support it a little bit. And then we're going to go finish this off with that flange nut. And we'll do that on both sides. Now the next part is going to be that sensor plate again. So we'll have this bracket that's going to sit on the bottom of these tabs that are welded onto the hitch, and you'll see there's a slight bend to this. We want that bend to be going around our hitch. And this, we'll pop that up, drop in our bolt with a flat washer, and then on the bottom we're going to have our flange nut. Now we're going to torque all four of those bolts, and for the two right here for our sensor, we're going to need to also have a 13mm wrench as well as our 13mm socket. Finally, with that all torqued down, we can pop back in our bracket for our sensor here. And same thing as taking it out, just these push pins. And then make sure that you reinstall that connector. With our sensor back in place, now all we have to do is reinstall all of our fascia here in reverse order. The only other thing that we're going to be doing is with one of the fascia pieces. So that's this guy right here that sits in the center. There's already a cutout that's in it. All we're going to do is just take our multi-tool and cut those little tabs that are actually holding this on, because this is where our hitch is going to sit through. So the receiver tube will be able to fit right through there, and then we can still have this mounted up with our fascia, so we have that nice hidden look. Now that we have our fascia reinstalled and everything's buttoned up nice and tight, the last thing to do is either pop in our receiver tube or our plug, depending on if we're just wanting to drive off or if wanting to take an accessory or a trailer with us. And those will just both pop right into place and be set and ready to go. Well, that's going to do it for our look at and installation of the Oris Trailer Hitch with detachable receiver here on our 2025 BMW X5. My name's Kevin, and if you're still looking for the right hitch solution for your BMW, please feel free to reach out to us via our Ask the Experts link, a comment on this video, or a phone call to our customer service department, and we'd be happy to help you out on your journey.